Michael Horn, it's so good to see you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Michael. Nice to meet you again online. We've spoken before, and I appreciate the opportunity.
So let's dive right in, as there's so much to explore in this absolutely fascinating case of Mr. Billy Meier, a controversial UFO contactee who has dedicated 80 plus years to delivering warnings and teachings, facing constant danger, which we'll talk about. And he survived something like 26 or more assassination attempts in his life.
27, yeah.
Yeah. Then there's the mountain of skepticism he dealt with whilst maintaining his mission to share the information he claims comes from extraterrestrial sources. And nowadays, browsing the internet, that seems like it's a normal thing. So, Michael, with 46 years of experience as a science researcher, you've also spent much of your life devoted to studying and promoting Billy's life, his work, and related teachings from the Plejaren. Is that how I pronounce it?
Plejaren, yes.
Plejaren. And that started in 1979 for you. And then in 1986, you discovered Unknown Warnings, which were originally published by Billy Meier from 1951. That's a long time ago. These told us about unnatural man-made climate change, global warming, the increased frequency and intensity of storms, blizzards, tsunamis, and the coming climate destruction. And look at the world now. We're kind of all going through that. And apparently you also found that Mr. Meyer was the first person to warn about the damage to the ozone layer from A-bomb explosions and about the connection between the extraction of petroleum and earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, all of which have substantially been corroborated by science. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk a bit more about the evidence coming up. Obviously, that was well ahead of later century scientific evidence and theories. So let's come back to all of that later. I won't even mention time travel yet. That's fascinating. And I'm honored to spend this time in a deep dive with the authorized American media representative for Billy Meier. Welcome, Michael Horn.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Just to go a bit personal to begin with, how has this intense investigation affected your life spiritually or emotionally?
Well, it's changed my life significantly. I grew up primarily listening to radio and then TV sci-fi in the 1940s. Then came obviously the 50s and on. But I was never into Star Trek until much, much later, after it was in reruns. I was fascinated, though, by this early sci-fi stuff. And I would have dreams also, at night, of course, of lights in the sky, discs, all sorts of things that weren't yet in the news. When I found the Meyer material, when I saw the first photo book in 1979, when in 1986 I got the first 1,800 pages of transcripts with all of this information, it changed the course of my life. I have been primarily an artist, inventor, singer, songwriter, kind of eclectic. And I gradually began to spend more and more time focused on this material because it's so compelling. And I've had certain kinds of success with my other work, but I realized that on a global level, there was nothing as important as this material. I could go and try to become more and more successful with this or that, but this material, the information, even beyond, far beyond, the stunning, singularly authentic UFO evidence, and by that I mean evidence that has been presented since 1964, all pre-digital. He did nothing with digital cameras. Independently analyzed, authenticated, clear, stunningly clear, not lights in the sky stuff. And it still is really irreproducible. Not that the effects can't be reproduced when you can make things look, but computer analysis shows this is singularly authentic evidence. Large objects a distance from the camera, and on and on. And then I just couldn't believe the volume of evidence, the quality. Wasn't only UFO photos, films, video, metal samples, sound recordings. And I would learn that in addition to my becoming an eyewitness to craft, there were about 100 or more other people, some who were photographers, about 5 other photographers, some people who had multiple sightings. And also it just, in a sense, I'm at a loss for words. I don't want to sound trite about it because I have looked into other so-called UFO cases, and there are other unknown, unexplained, but the evidence is paltry. Nothing has been really put through an examination such as Meyer's, because nowadays anybody can film any of the phenomena going on, which is going on worldwide, and Meyer foretold it. We can speak at some point about what he's foretold, which is, you touched on some of it. But there's nobody can write books and books and do any kind of presentations where you're going to have 100 slides, 150 slides delving into all of this content. Irreproducible. So it took, and it still takes, my time. I'm glad I spend as much time every day as I can on this, because it's either the biggest, longest running, most impenetrable hoax in modern history, or it's the single most development, true story, evidence, information in all of science and human history. What is more important than having real evidence, proof that there are other beings, that they've been meeting with a man for 83 years since childhood, that he has 45,000 pages of information? This is why I am not a fan of ufology. I'm not a ufologist. I don't care about the UFOs because it's really, in truth, we can't do anything much with UFOs. So I'll leave it at that. And so what can I tell you? What can I respond to before I carry on endlessly about my fascination here, per se?
Yeah, well, we're going to explore a whole range of different topics and things, and we'll probably come back and do another show or exploration to go even deeper and deeper, because it is absolutely fascinating. And what an amazing guy at his age. But I've watched a few of your previous interviews too, and you get very, very passionate about some of the things that are going on in the world today to do with UFOs and all of that. And so I wanted to also look into one of the practical outcomes of Billy Meier's UFO evidence of ET contact. And you've been very outspoken on the official claims, i.e. by the US government, of hostile intent by so-called UAPs, claiming they are disinformation intended to procure more funding for weapons and unprovoked wars, such as against Russia. And this reminds me also of the end message from Werner von Braun about the fake alien invasion from 1974, and as told by Carol Rosin. And any comments about that, and about this disinformation campaign that's going on, which is now coupled with the explosion of disclosure happening?
Sure. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll try to be concise. I want to say one thing, since you gave me an in on it. Today, we're ending 9/11 today at the time that we're speaking. Billy Meier warned about 9/11 beginning in 1947 and in 1987, 1947, 87, 89 specifically. This is when we get into that whole realm of things. I'm going to address what you just asked me, but people need to know this. Tied into this idea where I am being critical of our government and so-called disclosure, which is the biggest load of garbage. For instance, at Billy Meier's behest, about 6 years ago, my wife and I went to a place, Moab, Utah. There was a storage unit. Billy said, I think there might be some stuff in the archive of the late Wendell Stevens, who was Lieutenant Colonel, Air Force. He retired. He was an investigator. He led the investigation into the Meyer case. We went. 2 days in a dusty storage unit, 24 boxes. The last day, open the 24th box, and there's photographs of a UFO interacting with a then top secret stealth attack plane from the U.S. Turns out, I thought these were just part of something that Billy had already published once. Turns out, no. We learned that this was evidence that the lead investigator himself had photographed with the help of one of the extraterrestrials who was flying the craft. So I leave a message for our government, which is at that time in the middle of one of their ridiculous hearings. I get a call back. I was very surprised. Oh, we'd love to see your evidence. I said, okay, well, I'll send you digital copies. I did. Oh, we're going to work this up the chain of command. Thank you so much. They censored it. Nobody ever knew it came out, except there's a big show by an American show called Redacted with Clayton Morris. He had me on to talk about this a couple times and asked me, well, what do you think of the hearing? What's going to happen in this hearing? I said, same thing that happens in all of them. They're dead end. They run around in circles. It's very comfortable and convenient. Our government, on the level of secret military, higher levels of intelligence, knows that the UFO cover-up began 110 years ago. Sightings during the First World War. I don't want to go too far afield, but I will tell you this. I have looked at everything in the so-called disclosure field, the endless claims and videos from the self-styled disclosure expert Stephen Greer, to whom I offered all of this 21 years ago in public. He wouldn't look at it. He wouldn't look at me. He just ignored it because this is my opinion. All these people are hucksters. Now, what a terrible thing to say. I've sent, for years, over 20 years, I've been sending everything available to every person that popped up. I'm a UFO researcher. I'm an investigator. I'm an expert. All the way to Avi Loeb at Harvard, who's all concerned about this Atlas things coming in, which could be a craft, who knows? But I sent these people everything they could. They will not mention it. They will not even publicly say, oh, it's a hoax. Why? Because they have nothing of significance. Oh, there's phenomena up the wazoo. There's claims and whistleblowers. A lot of good people come forward as whistleblowers from our military. They only know what they've been allowed to know. Sometimes what they're talking about has been induced in their minds. False information. Sometimes it's accurate. Bless them. But they don't know anything. They have no evidence. There isn't a person. Lou Elizondo. Oh, and what's our friend's name? Ross Coulthart, who's making a big stir. When I approached him several years ago when he popped on the scene, I sent him the Meyer material. He was just starting to, and he literally wrote to me and said, I don't want to look into that because I've got this now and I have a family to feed. These people are supported by certain forces. They will get the press and all. I don't know if you're aware that there's been this thing with a U.S. Hellfire rocket that supposedly bounced up. Billy Meier, going back to the 1990s, has explained about the presence of other beings, either extraterrestrial or now subterranean races, not trying to harm us. They could have. This is where it gets so crazy with these phony claims about alien threat. Our country needs a threat all the time because we have so abandoned being productive with anything except the business of war. Yes, the hearings to raise more money for more weapons, for more endless, unprovoked wars of aggression. And Lou Elizondo, so serious, comes on the scene. I will tell the truth. I challenged him. Tell us about the Billy Meier case. Wouldn't respond. It goes on and on like this. So I see it's frustrating for me, but it's nothing compared to what Billy Meier's gone through. 27 attempts on his life, attacks on his character, attacks on his family. To this day, CIA-backed Swiss military helicopters fly over his property, dropping listening probes and all the rest, trying to pick up the conversations he has with the extraterrestrials, which they have no hope of doing. Why? Because the investment on an international level, and there's plenty CIA presence in your country, let's say covert, some know about it. I was introduced to that information in I think about 2006 when I came and did 4 presentations in beautiful, beautiful Australia. And it was pointed out to me, was it Pine Gap? And some people who knew a lot about the CIA presence. These entities in various secret intelligence, military capacity, they needed an enemy. There's reasons, and this goes back a long time, and it's explained in the Meyer material. We are so averse to peace, love, freedom, harmony. We are so poisoned. And some of that goes back to what's happened to us long ago, our human races on Earth, that was done to us by some extraterrestrials a few times. But now we get nothing but dead-end circular. There's never a resolution. Stephen Greer, and he can come on, they talk about the next best thing, next thing that's going to happen. It's always a nothing burger. Billy Meier stuff. We published his information on why this thing with the hellfire, because it goes back to these people where he's warned for years, your government should not attack, because he's talking about these other craft that are in the sky. They are not the Plejaren. And the ones that are not the secret military of the U.S. or other countries, those belong to what he calls the Earth foreigners. And he has said, no, I have a video from 2015. I'll make it available, of course, you can share it. He says, these people, their technology is vastly superior. You shouldn't be firing at them. It's no way to have a communication with people. And then when they get tired of it, it's going to lead to some very unpleasant things. You don't have any of that in this case. There's nothing about the development of weapons and evil alien threats. There are always negative and positives anywhere and everywhere, and we'll have to deal with them. But right now, the great danger to humankind comes from the insanity of our government and some that are aligned with it that are going to put us now unstoppably into the long-predicted war with Russia and China that is a dead-ender for us. May or may not affect you so much. It will affect the Northern Hemisphere. Meyer, when the warnings in 81 and 87 foretell this encounter, foretell the use of laser-controlled, biological, chemical, and computer-controlled weapons. AI. Meyer first foretells AI in 58 and in 87 and says, even to this day, we're warning now more about it, it will, in all likelihood, unless we wake up in time, it will ultimately do what we may not have finished doing to ourselves. It may destroy humankind. We don't understand this because everybody's fascinated with their little techno toys and the ability to think critically.
Really, the whole kind of hope from the early days, even Roswell and whatever, people standing, watching, remember Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, all of the people gathering, looking up for the sky. I know Billy doesn't like to put forward that kind of hope. And we'll come back to talking about the religious aspects. I don't like the word religious so much, but he's very much imparting the spiritual message of the Plejaren, and we'll get into that indeed. But you've spent so much time doing film work and in this research and whatever. Let's have a look at your latest documentary about Billy Meier and his contacts, Singly Authentic, definitive proof of ongoing contacts with UFO space and time travelers.
The common portrayal of extraterrestrials as little green men or little gray people is part of a disinformation campaign.
I was fascinated by the UFO evidence. It's incredible, unparalleled, authentic. There is nothing here to believe. We're looking for facts. This is about something even more important than UFOs. Your Billy Meier case is 100% ironclad authentic. I will take on any skeptics on your behalf.
You know, Billy Meier was doubted for many years. What do you think about him? The pictures are so vivid, and the Plejaren story so vivid.
Otherwise, we are told with certainty it comes in and strikes between the North Sea and the Black Sea. You want to read tomorrow's news? You read Billy's old prophecies and predictions.
In 1953, and this is verifiable, by the way. This is copyrighted, verifiable information of Billy Meier specifically talking about going underneath, being transported in a beam ship, and going underneath the pyramids in a massive underground chamber.
We are told even at that time who set this in motion, the progenitors of this disease. Which I would only later come to be able to find that he had published information about the damage to the ozone and atomic energy, indeed, back in the 1950s.
According to Meyer, we might as well roll cigarettes with our paper money for those of us that are still smoking.
The agendas to control everything. The American people will be dispossessed. It's happening now. In 1987, Billy Meier is warning about computer-based weapons. What does that mean? AI.
Well, I think it's an astonishing prediction by Billy Meier.
If your country attacks Iran, there's an enormous likelihood that Russia and China, which are becoming closer all the time, will attack your country.
You can watch UFOs till the cows come home. They're up there watching. These people are really crazy. How did they know the future unless they have time travel? Folks, it's right here. We're not going to have time travel now. But this is the evidence for it that somebody does. That's the latest documentary we did, as you said. And in there, we tried to hit all of these areas the physical evidence, the informational evidence that I now call the higher standard of proof. And that covers so many different things. And what they call now the creation energy teaching. They leave the word spiritual behind for very specific reasons that Billy goes into the etymology of language and words and all. He shows why that word came into being and how inaccurate it is, and the real correct word, creation energy. Anyway, we have elements of the teaching in there, interviews with people, pieces of things. We just flooded it with content so that people, even if they haven't seen my other 3 or 4 documentaries, they will have something so compelling here to provoke interest.
The teachings themselves, when did he start doing that? Relaying the teachings?
He started to speak about elements of it long ago, even when he was like 10 years old and all. I mean, when you read what he wrote when he was 9 and 10 years old, it's staggering for its clarity, sophistication, brilliance, and accuracy. And he was tutored from the age of 5 until 16 by his first teacher. And then there was another 11-year period, and it goes on and on. It's just brilliant material that has only become more available now in these recent, let's say, past 20 years. We've got 12 books, I think it is now, with the English translation on one side, German original on the other, with new books coming out, I think, around the first in the year. And they're not about UFOs. They're about thinking, reality, the creation, self-responsibility, how the laws of the universe actually work. They're just riveting things.
What I'm trying to find, I can't remember the exact quote, but something like when he was 7, people felt that he was of an age of 35 or something like that.
I think I know what you mean. When he was 7 years old, he was assessed as having the thinking capabilities of a 35-year-old adult. And when you read the stuff, it's just like, oh, really? Am I in a university classroom? Quite literally. Just beautiful stuff to read. He's so precise.
Just going further forward on your other documentaries, and Did They Listen? That was in 2015.
That was the most recent before, yes.
Tell me the story about what happened to the people of planet Earth.
Let's take a look back in time at the turn of their 21st century. There was a time when the people had created great turmoil, environmental catastrophes, and wars on their once beautiful planet. They thought of themselves as the only intelligent beings and the crowning glory of creation.
There are more advanced human beings than we are, and they're actually in contact with one man on Earth. Clearly, I mean, we would have to say this is the most important thing that's ever happened. The core of this case, again, is a spiritual teaching, not a belief system and not a religion, a teaching about human consciousness and all these things.
Die Menschen müssen lernen, sich selbst zu sein und müssen die Selbstverantwortung zu tragen lernen.
Fukushima, Meyer was told within mere days, this is already a super worst possible case scenario, which will only get worse. You are being lied to, and the contamination of your seas and your air, your food chain, is going to be exponential.
And As the Time Fulfills?
Yes, that was before that one. As the time fulfills, there are great changes and upheavals in the world, as long foretold by the true prophets of the past, Environmental destruction, nuclear contamination of war and terrorism increase despite the warnings. For the warnings fell on deaf ears as the people abdicated their personal responsibilities and succumbed to the mind-enslaving religions and sects and the might-hungry politicians and folks. But one ordinary man on an extraordinary mission, with 70 years of proven contacts with extraterrestrials and an unparalleled record of prophetic accuracy, once again brings the truth to humankind with the hope that we will heed the warnings as the time fulfills.
And the silent revolution of truth.
Before that one.
This Swiss farmer has taken over 1,000 clear daylight UFO photos, some even from on board these extraterrestrial spacecraft. He's filmed the UFOs, recorded the sounds, and presented samples of their metal for scientific examination. Is this why he's been the target of 21 documented assassination attempts? Or is it because of his other life in the Middle East as the Phantom, a hunter of serial killers who rubbed shoulders with world leaders like Gandhi, the King of Jordan, Franco, Tito, and Saddam Hussein? Or because he accurately predicted hundreds of dramatic events, from 9/11 to the Iraq wars, from global warming to AIDS, decades before they occurred? Or could it be because he discovered and published an ancient document so heretical that it threatens to overturn the core beliefs of all of the world's major religions? Is this the biggest hoax, or the most important story in all of human history? See for yourself. The silent revolution of truth.
And the Meyer Contacts.
Yes, basically a lecture with PowerPoint 2004, the Meyer Contacts, the key to our future survival, which I still say to this day, because it is. Sure, I'll say this, that each of the films, even beginning with the one that, it's more static as a documentary. Yes, I have photographs and animations and some film, but they all have elements of the prophecies and predictions, because I was, going crazy with how amazing these were. And so subsequent to each film, there were prophecies and predictions shown in each film that came true afterwards. In the film, as the time fulfills, I think we have 55 examples that were already proven of, and there were more at the time, but that was in 2012, I think, and there were 55 examples, the most varied things. It's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't lucky guessing. He's talking very specific discoveries, events that would occur, all with appropriate detail. There's nothing vague or symbolic. A bird will fly between the two trees. No, there will be this discovery, or a lot of these things. When we talk about prophecies and predictions, he would ask a question of one of the alleged extraterrestrials, and they would answer him. So it wasn't given in a predictive form. If they had the answer, and they don't know the answers to everything, clearly, thankfully, because it'd be pretty uncomfortable in a way, but they would give them the information. And when you mentioned the ozone damage, see, what happened was, let me just tell you how that came about. I get the first book in 1979. Boy, it's riveting. I can only go so far. It's about the ongoing investigation, photos, films, analysis of these things, sound, and every now and then there's a quote on a page. All right, and I'm reading, I'm not sure what that is. A couple of years later, go on a trip to a place called Sedona, Arizona, kind of mecca of the New Age paranormal. I'm with my daughter and a friend. We're in a cafe. One other person sitting away at the other end. We order food. I say, hey, buddy, why don't you come over and join us? We get to talking. And, of course, we're talking about Sedona and vortexes and UFOs. And suddenly Billy Meier's name comes up. I don't remember if I mentioned or he did. Next thing I know, he says to me, do you have the contact notes, the contact? No, what's that? 1,800 pages of conversations Billy's having with these extraterrestrials. I said, wow. He said, look, come back to L.A.? I said, yeah. He says, come up, I'll give it to you. Gives them to me. When I get back there, obviously not before. I study, I read. It's it was two things, mind-boggling and a little frustrating. Mind-boggling because of the content, frustrating because these were the early English translations done by someone who primarily spoke German, clearly, because the sentence structure was a little funky. 2 years later, I stuck the stuff under my bed. 2 years later, I opened a newspaper. Ozone damage tied to A-bomb explosions. New discovery. Prominent laboratory in California, Lawrence Livermore. I'm going, wait a minute. How do I know that? And how do I know those percentages they're talking about? Reach under the bed. These 18 blocks of 100 pages each. So they were nicely bound. It was called in that day Xeroxing. They would, no, it was mimeographing before Xerox. Remember that? Mimeograph. So these mimeograph sheets bound up with little, fasteners. And I'm going through there, and as early as the seventh contact in there, I don't know, 80 pages in or whatever. Here they're talking to him about the ozone damage tied into atomic bomb testing. 3 pages at least of information. Really dense. Lawrence Livermore only says it's tied in. Scientist up there, he's talking about this. He discovered it and all that. And good luck. I'm going, wait a minute. This is kind of funny. Okay, I'm thinking about it. 2 years later, another article. Petroleum and gas extraction interconnected with earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. An article, I guess it's a guy from Stanford University, Paul Siegel, was it? And he's talking to scientists saying the extraction of petroleum, natural gas, it leads to the imbalances in the tectonic plates. They go, whoa, wait a minute. I read that too. I go down there. It's the first or second contact, 75, 76, whatever. There it is. And I'm going, okay, this is about something more important than UFOs. Fascinating, love it, great photos, it's real. Can't do anything with it. I can do something with this. I can find out a lot more. So from that time on, I started to pay more attention, clearly, and articles in newspapers, on the radio and TV, and then more and more online, scientific discoveries. Look, as early as 1948, Billy Meier's first teacher, Plejaren, called Svath, again, allegedly, is warning about the earthquakes that are going to occur 1948 in central Italy in 2016. These are going to be precursors to the beginning of the eruption of 5 major volcanoes in Italy. Now, I got to do this from memory. Now I'm just sure I remember or not. Vesuvius, Etna, Stromboli, Mount Marsili, and Campi Flegrei. 2016, beginning, central Italy earthquakes. Okay. Well, here's something I could find out if this is just a bunch of nonsense or not. I start searching online. Strongest earthquakes, Italy, central Italy, 2016. And I put the article up. The strongest earthquakes on record in central Italy occurred in 2016. Shortly thereafter, each of those volcanoes have become active. The Campi Flegrei, I think it's pronounced Flegrei, has become rather disturbingly active, because when that one goes, parts of Italy may end up in the sea. In this document alone from 48, one thing after another, and this elderly man, Svath, is saying, your scientists don't yet know there are hundreds of thousands of undersea volcanoes. They're active, and they're going to become more. Within the last year, scientists discovered 18,000 undersea volcanoes. I mean, it doesn't stop. We send out warnings to scientists, and of course they laugh at them or don't respond. We send out and post information on Twitter and Facebook. Very few responses. Considering how many people are babbling about UAP, UFO stuff, basically the online communities, for the most part, and then I'll shut up here, they don't want to know about this. They want the excitement, the entertainment value. Lots of people want to feel important talking about things and thinking that they have just discovered sliced bread or something. Folks, this isn't about us becoming important. It's about us becoming effective. And if you can't research this information and put aside your own egos and your own claims for which you have zero evidence, then this all about you thing is going to just suck up the bandwidth. And as these things fulfill, the chorus will be, why didn't somebody warn us? And Billy's been trying to warn us for 83 years.
Yeah. And he also described water on Mars 35 years before NASA.
Oh, this is also in our new film. It happens that, just the way the others did, that there's an article, this is discovered on Mars, and I go, oh, okay, got to check, because I know 1976, Billy's for, so I know where the stuff is more and more now, and I can go to it, but there's still plenty of stuff I've got to go back and read and reread and look for. What happened, and we have this in the film too, and I've written about it. I saw in our local paper, USGS, that's the United States Geological Survey, and they do all sorts of work. They are doing photo imaging from the rover on Mars, right here, not far from where I live. There was an article about this scientist, Ken Herkenhoff, who's doing this. Big guy holding a model photograph of something, right? So I said to him, hey, let's go up and see Ken Herkenhoff. And I ran off 3 pages of information on Mars. I mean, 3 pages of information on Mars, back and forth. Went up there, no appointment, no call. How can we help you? Is Ken Herkenhoff available? Well, I'll ask and see, says the receptionist. Yes, if you'll wait here, she says, after calling him. Out comes this big bear of a guy, smile on his face, just a good-natured man. How can I help you? I said, Ken, if you'd be so kind, I know you're busy. Thank you for taking an impromptu. 3 full pages of information. Would you look at it and get back to me? Yeah. A few days pass. I get an email. Could this man be making lucky guesses? Now you know something's happening. I said, no, Ken, I don't think so. Silence. 2 days later. Okay, he says, I've never heard of lightning on Mars that this man is talking about. I said, okay, give me a minute. So I go online, and I look up, and I find that NASA, in 2009, like 30 years after Billy Meier's describing lightning on Mars, they discover it. And I pointed out to him. He says, well, I hope you're not going to try to convince me. I said, you bet I am. You're a scientist, right? I said, you should be able to refute this stuff. Well, he got very quiet. He didn't want to talk any more about it. And I put together a collection, over 60 specific, error-free, non-theoretical, ironclad, prophetically accurate examples of astronomical information on Mars, Jupiter, Venus, the moon of Neptune, Pluto, the planets beyond Pluto that Meyer foretold in 1958 that would only get discovered, 2 planetoids after 2000, which were discovered, and the moon of Io of Jupiter, the most volcanic active body in the solar system, verifiably spoken about, explained. All this information, 60 plus examples. And that's, as I say, we have 250 plus examples, including tons of other stuff. I published that, and I sent it to, they don't want to know. And I'm telling you right now, anybody, and I would just beg somebody to look into this, we prove, verifiably, publish this information, specific, prophetically accurate, scientific information, including astronomical, before official discovery, the events occurred, copyright verified. We can prove it. And anybody, I'll tell you this, I explained this, and this will be, I'll shut up here after this, but I was in Las Vegas in 2013, MUFON, which is basically the opponent of Billy, although they've had me come a couple times, some kind of courageous folks and some MUFON things said, well, you got to, you'll lecture here. I said, sure. So they give me a table in MUFON, but not, and they're playing one of my films, but they won't have me lecture. And I've got all this stuff on the table, and this older guy comes by the table, kind of shaking his head. I said, excuse me, sir, what do you do? I'm a retired judge. Oh, yes, step in your courtroom, Your Honor. Step right in. How can I help you? So, as I've told the story many times, I said to him, if I tell you that NASA's claim that they discovered that the reason for the contraction of the surface of Mercury is because of the metal core, but that really a guy I know in Switzerland discovered it first 32 years earlier or whatever, would I have to prove it to you? He said, well, of course you'd have to prove it. So I said, do you see this book, Your Honor? Yes. Do you see this copyright date? Yes, I do. I happen to know where this one was, fortunately. Do you see here where this fellow, Billy, is asking some alleged extraterrestrial woman, Samyaze, to tell him why the surface of the planet Mercury contracting? And she says, well, it's because of the metal core. So, Your Honor, you see that? Yes, I said, closing book. In your courtroom, who prevails? You do. I want the book. I want the film. I want this. This is the difference between, I'm sorry, with all due respect, and there are people I know and like, but one copyrighted book, one proven authentic photo. I was interrogated by an intelligence officer who was a skeptic, and then he proved the case was real. When you have ironclad proof like copyright, people can make all the claims they want. Oh, I was, this and that. Could be true, but where's your evidence? If I'm going to make a case for somebody out of respect for the scientific process, for critical thinking, for integrity and credibility, where's the evidence and where's the analyses and where's the authentication? Does it anything do that?
So that really brings up the question of how does Billy know this? Is it just from the conversations with the various Plejaren people, or is he time traveling? Is he visiting, astral traveling? What's going on?
That's the right question, if you will. There's several ways, actually, through the conversational exchanges that may be done in his office, or in the case of things like, for instance, Jupiter and the moon Io, he's there in the craft, and it's being described. He's talking about what he was told before and what he's seeing there. And then there are things that he has been shown that relate to the far distant past, which we can't prove, or the future, which we can't prove until they start occurring and we have those copyrights. That is only possible, as we say in the film, the only possible ways is space and or time travel. If you walk into a courtroom, as we could, and be glad to do it, with 5, 10, 15, 30, 50, 60, 200 specific ironclad examples, and let's say half or more are events that were verifiably occurred that could have only been obtained through time travel, and we have copyrights for them. That's how it happened, folks. And this is why people, scientists and universities, they don't want this. We don't want our agenda to be ruined. People pay lots of money to be students here, and you're going so fast because, and I've done university presentations where that wasn't in operation. I did 4 in Canada and a couple in this country. I almost had another one, and the university shut it down, prevented it, because they just are not up for it. And I've had a skeptical professor be the professor to bring me in twice to a university here. And also, I met at that university with a world-class skeptic, a brilliant guy. I was just fascinated by, who actually, we have it on film where he allowed me to go through the photo book, and the guy's head is bobbing like this, never interrupted once. It doesn't mean he agreed with everything, but these are the exceptions in the skeptical field. People who don't have an axe to grind, they're skeptics, but they're open-minded. Bring it on.
Let's start getting into the teaching. So the creation energy teaching is a non-religious, belief-free, scientific and consciousness-based teaching aimed at helping people reconnect with the truth of their being and the laws of creation, primarily brought forth through Billy's own efforts and abilities, but also studied by the Plejaren. There's a whole list of various kinds of things. Okay, let's just start with evolution of consciousness, that humanity must evolve through self-responsibility, inner awareness, and a deep connection to creation, the universal life force and source, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it is beautiful. In the teaching, and I'm not an expert, it's so vast and so worthy of study, I will hit some bullet points out of respect for the limitation of my ability to pontificate. This first cornerstone, as Billy says, is 100% self-responsibility for everything in our lives. Now, that could be a stopper for, what do you mean? If this thing happens or that, I'm not responsible. That's true. But we are responsible for what we do, how we think about, and how we act when things are occurring that are not of our, most obvious creation or co-creation ourselves. There are there's all sorts of things you can say. Well, this event occurred and I didn't cause it. That's right. So I'll cover that just to say we have the responsibility then for how we respond. There's, I think, an old Greek philosopher said it's not events, but our attitude towards them that determines, things in our lives. But we are self-responsible, meaning that we have to think through things for ourselves. They are very big on no beliefs. Religion, non-religious, religions, cults, everything, whether it's Catholicism, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, New Ageism, any ismism, requires beliefs. And where there's belief, there's no factual truth to the belief. When something can be shown to be accurate as part of a belief, that's great. Most things that get supposedly corroborated in, let's say, in religions, are that places that are foretold in holy books are found, and some other thing. That's great, but even today with events where we have cameras, we have disagreements about what happened. Yeah, here's a place, but what really happened here? Such as a terrible event that happened yesterday in America. Self-responsibility means we have to control our thinking. This is another part of it. So we must learn to see things as they really are, within ourselves and outside of ourselves, and to control our thoughts so that we are not overwhelmed by feelings that arise from our thinking. This is a big one in the teaching. Thoughts precede all feeling. I don't mean kinesthetic feeling, like, oh, that felt good. I mean, when we feel about things, there are either discernible, obvious thoughts or thoughts that have occurred below conscious awareness, which is big for most people, at least a large part of the time. So we are encouraged, or taught, if you want to say, to learn to pay attention to our thinking, to our inner awareness. I have a workshop I created that's in harmony with the stuff that I created before I knew about the teaching. It just so happens, Billy says, no, teach that. That's part of the teaching. I said, great. There are many good mindfulness things that are on to this kind of a thing. There's specific things in the teaching. And neutral positive thinking is another huge element. Neutrality. The Swiss were known for neutrality until now. They've been giving it up, and they will be embroiled in all these terrible wars and face much destruction that they avoided previously, like during the Second World War when they were neutral, because partisanship is not an appropriate, a productive way of thinking. When you I did a video called Politics Makes People Stupid. Sorry. As soon as you have taken a side, rather, you've shut out then another point of view because you don't like some or part, or you think all of it, it's got to be wrong because our point of view is the right one. That means you're going to have, without a doubt, conflict, seeking for advantage. Politics and religion always ultimately lead to aggression, conflict, and wars.
Obviously, we're going to have to come back and explore all of these things a little bit more, but I'll just quickly say the bullet points, and because I want to really maybe end up on the 7 steps, which are absolutely fascinating and very practical. In terms of the teachings, the law of cause and effect, that everything in the universe functions under immutable natural laws, including cause and effect. Do you want to just very briefly talk to that?
It's a law of physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Every thought leads to another thought and or feeling and or action. Ultimately, it's going on 24/7. It's amazing that we're still here the way we think. It's a process of our, brain, mind, call it what you will. And that's why it's so important to understand that it is in operation all the time. What we start putting energy and thought to, in accordance with the law of cause and effect, starts to create effects. Some of them are less tangible. They may be less concentrated and less potent and less productive, either to the good or the bad. Some are more so because of the intensity. There are laws that we know nothing about. There's a law of provision, just to jump for a second. We don't get favored by the universe. A lot of the, thinking we've all become accustomed to, well, the universe is directing me to do this or gave me that, or, no, there are these universal laws. And as we learn about them through the teaching, or how a lot of people learn without this teaching, it's not the belief system, start tuning in, as we learn about these laws and we live in harmony with them, being careful about how we think, how we feel, and what we do with our feelings, so we're not acting carelessly and all. The more we striving is another big thing spoken about here, huge. The more we purposely strive for that which is of value, and then is knowingly or unknowingly in accordance with these creational laws, the more we come in contact with if you want to use that word, the law of provision, prosperity in different forms, because there's no punishment built into life. Cause and effect. We learn through mistakes. We make mistakes. We do stupid things. We get an action we don't want. That we avoid doing that. We're not being punished by the universe. There's none of this after death, some imaginary God is going to, dip you for eternity in hot lead. No, this is what the fear and control of irrational, delusional religious thought. No, we start to learn, and if we read, we learn more.
So moving forward, technology versus evolution of consciousness. While technologically advanced, the Plejaren stress balance with the evolution of consciousness prioritized over technological dominance. I think let's leave that for the next session, because obviously that could take up ages.
It does.
But the last one is universal love. A core idea is to live in unconditional, egoless love, understanding and harmony with all life, which all of the avatars and past teachers, and that is the most universal of all the teachings.
Somewhere Billy has a definition about love, and it's something like love is the knowledge of the interconnectedness of all things and all beings and everything in creation. When you have that knowledge, you cannot help. Well, there are people that may be able to help violate it willingly, but it's difficult and unpleasant type of a thing to pursue. When you know that and you feel it and you see it, Billy said, see the creation in everything and everyone. It's there. Nature is the creation made manifest and teaches us. So it's right there. It is that egoless, all-embracing with discernment, interconnectedness, respect for protection, preservation, conservation of the environment, of nature, and all things in people.
Before I read out the 7 steps, the Plejaren are not allowed to interfere directly in Earth's affairs unless human actions threaten planetary destruction. But that opens up for me, like, maybe we should just spend a few minutes talking about Billy's relationship with these number of different beings and their names and how those interactions occur. Like, did they just pop in for a barbecue someday and have a rave, or
maybe we save that one because it opens up a lot for the next interaction. There's plenty to talk about there.
And this being an introductory kind of session, is like, it really does show how much and how rich all of these experiences over how many 80 years?
83.
So I'll read out the 7 steps, and it's really incredible. Well, firstly, how did the 7 steps arrive?
Billy brings forward information through a certain process, and maybe next time I'll be able to explain a bit more so people understand that while he also as a person writes aspects of the teaching, he says that he brings forward what the teaching of creation is part of what creation has for us. And there are certain ways that we'll have to explain a little later about how I understand that is done, but he will then be the one who will literally be the writer of it, although he will say he's not the author of it. It's very clear about that.
Okay, yeah. So the 7 steps, the world's happenings are dependent on our thoughts. At first, the human must seek the truth, find it, gain knowledge from it, and expand on it. Number 2, as a second step, the human must correct his thoughts, his and her thoughts, in a controlling manner and align them with the truth of their gained knowledge. Number 3, next step is the human must, through his knowledge and his thoughts, create his inner harmony. As a 4th step, the human must, based on his inner harmony, correct, straighten out, form, and harmonize his own character. And number 5, the human must correct, straighten out, form, and harmonize his direct environment, his family life and relatives' lives. And number 6, the human must correct, straighten out, form, and harmonize his near environment of friends, mates, and acquaintances. And 7th, the human is then capable to correct, to straighten out, to form, to harmonize, and to lead a group of humans, the mass of humanity, in fact, the state and the world, in a wise, humane, and creational, just and law-like way.
It's so beautiful because we get ahead of ourselves in life, and especially in these days, and it's not that it's only happened now, but it's just, an extremist. Everybody wants to be famous and a celebrity and recognized. It's really a miserable thing if you think about it. You have no peace of mind. But a lot of people are constituted for that or believe they are. When these 7 steps are showing us that we have to start with ourselves always. Step 1, and there's more to do always. with the refinement of ourselves, our knowledge, our wisdom, our character. And then we take these steps. We may not get to all these steps in one lifetime. It's enough to be working to get harmony with ourselves and our mates, our partners in life, and maybe our neighbors, and not doing no damage, doing no harm in the process. But these 7 steps are this goal to manifest so that we can be productive and contribute to peace, love, freedom, and harmony.
Yeah. And Billy's had a very expansive and maybe complex mission, and he always promoted love, peace, freedom, and harmony. Yet he suffered so much attack and ridicule. Why do you think that is?
Well, look back throughout history at any people who were ahead of their time, bringing light to the world. There are 6 other prophet contactees we can talk about next time related to this overall material, this case. There are reasons connected to this that go back a long, long distance, where some of the good human nature that Billy, he talks about that often, has been trampled, overridden by negativity, greed, aggression, and things. Largely, we are responsible for it, but where this imbalance began is a very interesting thing. It's very ancient. It doesn't give us an excuse for perpetuating this bad kind of conduct, if you will, but this began a long time ago. When we are ready, as we deal with ourselves, these 7 steps and all, and other things, constantly seeing things as they are, self-responsibility, we bring ourselves into harmony more and more with the laws of the creation energy, and our lives improve. This is the beauty of it. You don't necessarily become a wealthy, powerful person, unless it's really what you're striving for. You may, but the happiness, the joy, the contentment, the enoughness, and the surprise, and the awe of life, and things we never stop to even look at or contemplate, it keeps expanding. It's a gift to us. It's just an enormous gift. Truth is an enormous gift. Truth isn't only with Billy Meier, but teaching gives us that taste more and more. It's a banquet if we want it. And then when we find elements of truth in other places, we can recognize them and embrace them. It's not a cult. It's not a belief system. It's for us to discern and decide.
So wrapping up now, I'm very interested in this particular point, because in the evolution of Beyond Being Human, which started with angelic inspiration, the whole aspect of ETs and UFOs has always run the risk of totally overwhelming everything else. And I stopped at a dozen topics to explore based on people coming into my life and talking about all of these different topics. I've always said, don't think this is all about ETs and UFOs. And Billy, with his prophecies, predictions, creation energy teaching, that's so much more important than the UFO evidence.
I'll put it this way. In ufology, there is always the unasked question, certainly about Billy Meier. Well, if these contacts are real, what's the reason for them? What's the reason? And I put it this way. The reason is to help us assure our own very threatened future survival by not focusing on the eye candy of UFOs, extraterrestrials that are simply other beings that are doing their lives, and they're not going to come here and walk around with it, but to bring forward that material that they study and have studied for a long time, that they do their best to live in harmony with, to fulfill, so that we can learn the way to live. Billy's got a book on that, The Way to Live, not with threats of fear and punishment and all this, but rather with that which can help us, that we may turn around this dead-end pursuit of destruction and gain that which we really have been looking for, which we can't fulfill ourselves with simply through amassing possessions and trying to be more powerful and all. The teaching of the creation energy is literally the key to our future survival. And it's not a burden. It's a freedom. Hopefully, people will turn to that to investigate and determine the truth for themselves.
And just harkening back to Beyond Being Human, our two main points that we are exploring our multidimensional nature, but also nurturing our divine spark. And it's just incredible how enriching all of that is. And hopefully, over time, people will open up to accept a lot more of this contact. And like Billy, over all of these years and so many photos, we haven't even got to the photos and the videos and all of that. And I encourage people to really have a look at the shop that you've got available on your website, which has access to downloadable videos, and you can buy DVDs and books and all of that. And I think what will happen now, we'll publish this, it'll be up on YouTube and the beyondbeinghuman.org website. Maybe do a few different things, like a question answer with a live audience, and then we can really start to bring out a lot more depths about all of this. And possibly even if you wanted to create a teaching webinar, we could offer that as well. And
whatever folks are interested in, we could do that.
So look, I know time's up.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
I always love talking about this material with people that are interested.
Look, I've got to be totally honest. For a while, I was looking at the whole Billy Meier case and going, I just don't know. It looks too good to be true. And like the photos, they look like they're faked and whatever, but I'm now convinced. And there's so much depth in all of this that it's really, really quite amazing. So thank you so much for the life that you've led in gathering all of this material. Looking forward to the next session.
I thank Billy for living through some of the greatest and some of the worst experiences in life to bring this forward.
Well, glory to the light of the radiant one, and we'll say goodnight for now.
Here's Billy sitting across from me, and my first impression is here's a guileless man. He is not worried about the questions I'm going to ask him. He looking me straight in the eye. He doesn't look away. His gaze doesn't waver. He's not interested in anything else. He's patiently waiting for me to ask the questions. And I started off with a pointed question. I said, Billy, are these pictures of models? He says, oh, of course not, Mr. Steve, if I can't make a model. He only had one arm. And Il Jacobi, or Lou Zinsak, had told me that he had a broken camera. It was a Japanese Ryko camera that had been dropped, and the focus ring was jammed, that couldn't turn it, and the mirror beside the lens viewing window had fallen down, and he couldn't look through the camera at all, so he just shot from the hip, so to speak, like that. And he was getting these beautiful pictures, and he couldn't change the speed setting, and he couldn't change. He shot everything at ASA 100 Kodak film, if he could get it, or any other ASA 100, and 1/35th of a second on f1.11. All the pictures were shot on f11. The focus ring was jammed just about a 16th to a 32nd inch short of the infinity setting. So it meant that everything in focus had to be beyond 35 feet, which was the
Did
focus.
He give you pictures on that first visit? Did he give you something?
He gave me 100 pictures
on that first visit.
He let me in his little office, and he let me go through his stash of pictures there. All they had done up there. And by that time he had taken probably 6 or 7 series of pictures, and some of them, the series was more than one roll. So I went through and picked out the best pictures of the lot, and I was going to buy them from him, and he wouldn't take any money. He just gave them to me. So I took them home, and I started studying them, and I couldn't find any. I'd seen a lot of pictures and a lot of fakes, and I couldn't figure out how he could be doing this with a broken camera and working alone and with one arm.